over the last 2 or 3 years, we are talking about the dollar strengthening on the back of major inflows into US assets. So with this impending diversification, the dollar might be declining, which actually strengthens the case to seek non-dollar assets, which brings us to a sweet spot for investors right now to diversify into perhaps non-dollar bonds for a start.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Unscripted in conversation with eSpring. I'm super excited to have with us Rong Ren, one of our senior portfolio managers on our Asia fixed income desk. We're very proud of the fact that we're one of the largest Asian bond managers, award-winning Asian bond managers in the region. Rong Ren, good morning. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Salman.
Thanks, Rong Ren. So let's talk fixed income. So Rong Ren, we've been talking about US exceptionalism for a while now, and with policy uncertainty, tariffs coming in, what's next after US Treasuries? Should investors be looking to diversify out of US fixed income and Treasuries?
Yeah, so for the first time in a couple of years, we have increasing concerns, about the viability of US assets. First of all, with the election of Trump last November, we are seeing increased uncertainty regarding Trump policies, which could have an economic impact on the US economy. And in addition to that, we are talking about uncertainty related to trade policy, tariffs, as well as the fiscal trajectory, which is of course a source of concern for investors. And potentially with major ramifications on US Treasuries, especially on the longer tenor bonds. So with that, I think people are looking for alternatives to US assets. And just recall, over the last 2 or 3 years, we are talking about the dollar strengthening on the back of major inflows into US assets. So with this impending diversification, the dollar might be declining, which actually strengthens the case to seek non-dollar assets, which brings us to a sweet spot for investors right now to diversify into perhaps non-dollar bonds for a start.
That's an awesome point. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rong Ren. Really appreciate it. A very convincing case. Just non-dollar, let's talk about Asia local currency bonds, which haven't always been front and center on investors' minds, increasingly so now. What has changed structurally in the Asian local currency bond market that gives us conviction that this is one of the non-dollar asset allocation calls we want to make?
Yeah, so certainly over the last 10 to 15 years, what has become obvious to me as an investor in this space is that the investor base has actually structurally shifted. It used to be the case, post GFC, that the price action and the participation was dominated by foreign investors, which means that all these assets were vulnerable to capital inflows, capital outflows, which increases the volatility of these assets. But we know that we have a growing middle income, a growing middle class in Asia, and this in turn actually supports the domestic pension funds as well as the insurance industries, which have now become the dominant players in the domestic markets. These guys are the major investors now, which actually increases the stability of the fixed income, local fixed income assets at this point in time, which therefore actually improves and makes the risk return of local bonds actually more favorable than before.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. And Rong, just delving into that a little bit, right? So we get the case, we get the investor base shift and the liquidity pools because of that. Just talking about Asia, generally the reaction would be diverse region, credit differentiation, FX volatility, policy divergence across Asia as well. Help us understand a little bit, and our viewers understand, how do you as a senior PM and the desk manage that as part of kind of looking at Asia fixed income and address these factors?
Yeah, so first of all, we take a macro-driven approach towards the identification of the risk and opportunity set within this space. As you correctly pointed out, I think there are quite a number of risk levers we can pull when we invest in this asset class. For example, there is FX, there's credit, there's rates. So after the assessment of the macro opportunity and risk set, we identify which of these risk levers are actually the best one to pull. And we actually come up with a combination of these risk levers to actually derive the optimal risk opportunity set for the strategy that we are running.
Right.
And I believe that this is the way that we actually manage the strategy in a way, and as particularly for fixed income, which is always downside risk focused. Ensure that in the midst of capital preservation, we still maintain a reasonable level of return that we want to achieve for our clients, depending on their risk appetite.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Rong Ren. The way we usually do this, we then get to punchline, and this is more about you. So tell our viewers why Rong Ren, as a senior portfolio manager, your investor philosophy, and why investors should invest with you as a PM. We'd love to hear more.
So Salman, I think there might be impression that because I'm based in Singapore, all my investment decisions are actually derived from the team that is based in Singapore. Eastspring is a regional fund manager, and we have a footprint across most major cities in Asia. So the investment decisions and ideas that are generated for the strategies that we actually manage, they actually come from the investment professionals across the region.
Yes.
So you're talking about the aggregation of some of the best ideas right from the ground, which are actually aggregated up into the strategies which we actually manage. And this is how we actually generate the returns that we want to achieve for our clients.
That's fantastic. Rong Ren, I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I think you really put a compelling case forward in terms of this strategic shift. Great to have you on
Thanks, Salman.
Unscripted.
Thank you.
Have a good Friday. Take care.
Yes.
Thanks, Rong Ren.